Validation interview questions and answers. Beginner means advanced. Introduction. Validation is the process of checking whether data is correct, complete, secure, and follows required rules. Before processing, validation is widely used for web forms, REST APIs, databases, authentication systems, payment systems, backend applications. Validation helps ensure data integrity, security, correctness, reliability. Common validation types include input validation, server-side validation, client-side validation, schema validation, business rule validation. 1 to 20. Validation basics. What is validation? Process of verifying data correctness and integrity. Why is validation important? Prevents invalid data, improves security, protects systems. What is input validation? Checking user-provided input. What is client-side validation? Validation performed in browser application UI. What is server-side validation? Validation performed on backend server. Server-side validation. Why is client-side validation useful? Faster feedback, better user experience. What is required field validation? Ensuring mandatory fields are provided. Required validation example. Input required. What is type validation? Verifying data type correctness. Common validation types? String validation, numeric validation, email validation, date validation. What is length validation? Restricting minimum maximum input size. Length validation example. At size, min equals 3, max equals 20. What is range validation? Restricting numeric value ranges. Range validation example. At min 1. What is regex validation? Pattern-based input validation. Email regex example. AZAZ09 dot plus at. What is format validation? Ensuring data follows expected format. What is null validation? Checking for missing null values. What is sanitization? Cleaning unsafe input data. 21 to 40. Web and API validation. Type, email. What is JavaScript validation? Client-side browser validation using JavaScript. JavaScript validation example. If name length less than 3. What is REST API validation? Validating incoming API requests. Why validate API payloads? Prevent bad requests. Protect backend systems. What is JSON schema validation? Validating JSON structure and data. JSON example. Name, John. What is request body validation? Verifying incoming payload data. Spring Boot validation example. @valid. What is bean validation in Java? Standard validation framework using annotations. Click at, not null, email, pattern, not blank, example. What is DTO validation? Validating data transfer objects. What is schema validation in databases? Enforcing database structure rules. What is unique validation? Preventing duplicate values. Unique validation example, unique email, unique username. What is foreign key validation? Ensuring reference data exists. Restricting values to predefined options. Enum validation example. Active. What is custom validation? Application-specific validation logic. 41 to 70. Security and advanced validation. Malicious SQL manipulation attack. How does validation help prevent SQL injection? Check. Restricts unsafe input. Check. Enforces expected patterns. What is XSS? Cross-site scripting attack. How prevent XSS? Check. Input sanitization. Check. Output encoding. What is CSRF validation? Verifying request authenticity. What is whitelist validation? Allowing only approved values. What is blacklist validation? Blocking disallowed values. Which is safer, whitelist or blacklist? Whitelist validation. What is authentication validation? Verifying login credentials. What is password validation? Minimum length, complexity rules. Password regex example. Comma, equals, A to Z. What is CAPTCHA validation? Verifying human users. What is file upload validation? Verifying uploaded files safely. File upload validation checks. File type, file size, extension. Why validate uploaded files? Prevent malware, prevent exploits. What is business rule validation? Domain-specific rule enforcement. Business rule example? Age must be 18 plus. Balance cannot be negative. What is asynchronous validation? Validation involving external systems. What is database validation? Checking values against database records. What is validation middleware? Centralized validation component. What is centralized validation strategy? Shared reusable validation logic. What is fail-fast validation? Stop validation immediately after first error. What is aggregated validation? Returning all validation errors together. What is localization in validation? Multi-language validation messages. What is validation pipeline? Sequential validation stages. What is schema evolution challenge? Updating validation safely over time. What is API backward compatibility validation? Supporting older API clients safely. What is optimistic validation? Assuming likely valid input initially. What is defensive validation? Strictly validating all external input. What is edge case validation? Handling unusual, rare input cases. 71 to 100. Frameworks, testing, and best practices. What is validation framework? Library simplifying validation implementation. Check Jakarta validation. Check Joy. Check Yup. What is Joy? JavaScript schema validation library. Joy validation example, joy.string.required. What is Yup? JavaScript object schema validation library. What is Fluent validation? .NET validation library. What is Hibernate validator? Jakarta Bean validation implementation. What is front-end form validation? UI level input validation. What is backend validation priority? Server-side validation always required. What is validation error response? Structured error message returned to client. Validation error JSON example. Error, invalid email. What is API contract validation? Ensuring requests follow API specification. What is unit testing for validation? Testing validation rules independently. Validation test example. Assert false is valid. Common validation interview topics. Regex, DTO validation, input sanitization, schema validation. Common validation problems? Yes. Inconsistent rules. Yes. Duplicate validation logic. Missing server validation. Validate on server. Sanitize input. Centralize validation rules. Why avoid trusting front-end validation? Clients can bypass browser-side checks. What is over-validation? Excessively restrictive validation rules. What is under-validation? Allowing unsafe, incorrect data. What is data integrity? Maintaining accurate, consistent data. What is validation performance concern? Complex validation affecting scalability. What is distributed validation? Validation across microservices systems. What is eventual consistency validation issue? Temporary inconsistencies across services. What is API gateway validation? Centralized request validation at gateway layer. What is contract-first validation? Validation driven by API specification. How to become strong in validation. Key practice regex. Key build secure APIs. Key study OWASP security risks. Biggest validation interview concept. Ensuring secure and reliable data integrity. Key validation interview focus. Input validation, security, schema validation, and reusable validation architecture. Why is validation critical in software systems? Validation protects systems from invalid, malicious, or inconsistent data, while improving reliability and security. Validation interviews focus on input validation, server-side validation, regex and schema validation, DTO and API validation, security validation, file upload validation, business rule enforcement, validation best practices. Key idea. Strong developers understand secure input handling, centralized validation architecture, API schema enforcement, and defensive programming practices.